There's been a lot of talk over the last couple of days about the Golden Knights and what they're doing in the American Hockey League. Now, I had heard months ago, okay, the NHL AHL relationship between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Chicago Wolves is dead. It's done. I was told that months ago, and I didn't report it on the news because when you get information, you don't always have to report it out. And I try not to. I do. I can't make a conscious decision. If somebody tells me I work for this team, I work with this team, and hey, I've heard this has happened or this has gone on, I don't immediately fire up the camera and report it, because if you do that, you're going to lose that source. So hearing about this, yeah, there was no way this was going to work. Now, the Chicago Wolves are very key on keeping their brand intact, and they're a very smart franchise. They've worked independently. They've worked so far independently that I remember when Vancouver had an affiliation with them, the complaint was they would play, that their coaching staff would play veterans who weren't affiliated with the Canucks over the kids that the Canucks wanted to see develop. So this was a complaint that was had within Vancouver fandom, that they were more concerned about winning games in the American League than developing the young players. Now, the Canucks have moved on to Utica, which is bewildering. And it's still bewildering. It's bewildering to Canucks fans as well. So for fans who are out and around and saying, hey, why does Vancouver have an affiliate that's 2,929 miles from, and that's a number I pulled offline. If it's wrong, it's wrong. But it's a lot of miles. 2,929 miles between Vancouver and Utica. Why? And it's a valid question. So let's say Pedersen gets hurt, can't play. We have an emergency call-up. If we were Toronto, you just call the phone and say, hey, throw Billy on the bus. Billy's coming up and playing tonight. Done. If you're Vancouver, you kind of have to call last week before the injury took place. It means you might be forced to carry somebody that you might otherwise send to the American League, because you're like, I'd love to send him to the American League, but it's going to take a day for him to get up here. That's a long flight. And if there's troubles with travel because of holidays, because of weather, whatever the reason may be that might delay a flight, it might cause you not to be able to have a full roster on the ice. That being said, the Utica Comets are a very well-run team. And they've done a good job developing prospects for the Canucks. They have. Now that the Canucks are drafting well, suddenly prospects are turning out pretty good. I point to guys like Adam Gaudette. And Utica's having a pretty good year. So I understand why the Canucks don't necessarily want to sever that. But look, Bakersfield, California is 1,765 miles from Edmonton. I'm surprised the Oilers maintain that, but it's not 2,929 miles either. It's still at least on the same time zone. Belleville, Ontario, Ottawa, I put a check mark because they're in the same province, and 17 out of 31 teams are in the same city, state, or province, and that will become 18 when Henderson, Nevada, is where the Vegas Golden Knights have their farm team. Binghamton, New York, well, it's not in New Jersey, but they're only 168 miles from their parent club. Bridgeport, Connecticut, well, it's not where the New York Islanders play, but they're only 63 miles from their parent club. Charlotte, North Carolina, that checks out. Carolina. So, check mark. Chicago, Illinois, of course, will be changing their affiliation. The interesting thing is, with St. Louis losing their affiliate in San Antonio, Texas, the question's asked, so you guys are just going to go back to Chicago then? It's going to be the St. Louis Blues sending their players to the Wolves. And management has said, not necessarily. I don't see what other choice they have right now. That being said, affiliations change all the time. So the idea that they may look somewhere else, they may very well get an agreement with an affiliate that's on this board that belongs to another team right now. It happens all the time. An AHL, and especially if you look far enough back to look to when there was an International Hockey League, teams change affiliations all the time. So St. Louis is basically saying, that makes sense, but we're not going to announce that yet because we haven't, A, got an agreement with them, and B, there may be other options available to us once this summer rolls around. Cleveland, Ohio, that's Columbus, that's Ohio, checks out. Windsor, Colorado is where the Colorado Eagles play, and Denver, Colorado. So there you go. Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yeah, Detroit's in Michigan. Good job. Hartford, Connecticut. Well, Connecticut's not New York, but they're only 112 miles away from the New York Rangers. Hershey, Pennsylvania, it's not in Washington, D.C., but they're only 132 miles away. Des Moines, Iowa, not in Minnesota, but only 243 miles away from their parent club. So very close. Laval, Quebec, check mark. Allentown, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia, that's check mark. Winnipeg, Manitoba, right? So Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Nashville is 568 miles. That's a larger number than most of the other ones we're seeing, although some of these with check marks may have a large number, but if they're in the same state or province, I'm like, it's fine. Ontario, California, and LA. I remember when the LA affiliation changed from Manchester to Ontario, and it was weird because I thought, just casually you'd go, so they moved from England to Canada. Interesting. So it's just one of those things. And Ontario, California, I didn't know there was an Ontario, California until they got an AHL team. It confused me at first. I'm like, wait, Ontario? Just Ontario? Which part of Ontario? So, yeah. Providence, Rhode Island is 51 miles from Boston. I can't see the Boston Bruins ever having an affiliate that's not Providence. It's that strong. Much like Rochester and Buffalo. Rochester, Buffalo, absolutely. They belong together, and it's hard to differentiate one from the other. Rockford, Illinois, and Chicago are getting that way as well. Of course, San Antonio, Texas, I talked about it. They will no longer have a team, which means there'll only be one team in Texas unless somebody else moves. San Diego, California for Anaheim. It's a close relationship there. San Jose, California, well, the San Jose Barracuda and Sharks. Same spot, right? Springfield, Massachusetts, and the Florida Panthers are 1,414 miles apart. So it is the few that are that far apart. Stockton, California, and Calgary, 1,291 miles apart. It's interesting that both Alberta teams have their farm teams in California, and that it is a pretty healthy distance. Now, Calgary had their farm team here, Abbotsford. Didn't work out. And it didn't work out because I never understood it in the first place. Remember hearing, Abbotsford's getting an AHL team and going, that's cool, because I lived in Chilliwack at the time, and I was like, all right, well, that won't be too far of a drive. Calgary? Why the Flames? The Flames, a huge rival for the Canucks, and so the support wasn't where it should have been. And I look back now and I'm thinking, maybe if I could have come out and watched the games, maybe they'd still have lost the team because it's the Flames. So I think that hurt them. And I'm surprised there's an arena right here that could support an American Hockey League team easily. And I think Abbotsford did a good job proving that. Vancouver having a preseason game here against Ottawa this season, and the support was fantastic. It was a sellout, and we'll see if that impresses anybody in Vancouver management. And not only that, but when the Heat were here, anytime the Manitoba Moose, which was Vancouver's affiliate at the time, would come to Abbotsford, it was a sellout. So it was like, okay, if it was the Vancouver Prospects that were here, if it was a Canucks franchise, it would work. But Calgary moved their franchise to Stockton. Now Abbotsford Heat jerseys are hard to find and all that. I don't have one. And it's too bad because, again, I look back and it's like, but at that time, I didn't have a channel. I didn't have a lot of money at the time to be going to games in Abbotsford or figuring out a way. It would have been a pain. My wife, she loves going to games. But my wife and I weren't together at that time. So as much as, in fact, she went to games here in Abbotsford and she was a supporter of the Heat, if we'd been together at the time, we would have been huge supporters of Abbotsford, but, that's just not how things worked out. Now, Syracuse, Tampa Bay, 1,266 miles apart. So that's quite the distance, but again, Syracuse Crunch have been developing players for a very long time. They had an affiliation with Vancouver way, way, way back in the day as well. Cedar Park, Texas, and Dallas. Checks out, Texas. Toronto Marlies, Toronto Maple Leafs. That's a fantastic relationship right there. And that's the kind of thing that, yes, every team should strive to have that kind of a relationship. Tucson, Arizona, and the Arizona Coyotes currently of Glendale should be in Phoenix or should be somewhere. Maybe they can go to Tucson. I don't know. I don't know how you work it with Arizona, but at some point, the new owner, Maruello, he's going to have to sit down and go, all right, this has to work. we have to be able to make money because that's how business works, and they'll figure something out, but I think it'll still be in Arizona. So check mark. Utica, I mentioned with Vancouver, 2,929. They are over double the distance of any team from their affiliate other than Bakersfield and Edmonton and Chicago and Vegas, and that's something Vegas is changing because as soon as they come into the NHL, they wanted to have an affiliate near them. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. So that checks out there with Pittsburgh. That's a relationship that's been together for a very long time. I can't see that changing. And Seattle's coming in, and they've chosen Palm Springs, California, which according to Google Maps, is 1,241 miles apart. So they will join what has become kind of a California division with Stockton, San Jose, San Diego, and Bakersfield, as well as Ontario. So a lot of California teams all together. That'll help AHL travel expenses until some of these guys get called up to the NHL, and then you're making the expenditures for the NHL teams a little bit higher. I was surprised Seattle didn't pick Boise, Idaho for that reason. It would have been closer. But again, NHL teams don't always think that proximity is that big of a deal. But clearly more than half the NHL thinks it is important. That it is important that when you're playing a game and you're like, we need an injury replacement for tomorrow's game, that you can get that call up and it's not a big deal. And that not only that, you can kind of mind the fort. Make sure that you and I don't want to say micromanage your AHL team, but you want to know what's going on and you want to be able to kind of hop in your car, take a drive, and not have it take 6 or 7 days to get there. Go, hey, I thought they had a game. Yeah, we had a game 6 days ago. Why'd you drive? You should have flown. That's where things are at. As far as I know, Vancouver's happy with the Utica relationship. But there are places that can host American Hockey League franchises that are not on the board and could very well be on the board at this time next year. Things are always in flux. I do feel kind of bad for AHL fans because, yeah, at any point in time you can just get your team yanked out from under you. Whether you support it or you don't, somebody just comes in with money, goes, hey, I want to move this team over there, and the AHL goes, all right. Because they don't have quite the we have to stay, these franchises have to survive mentality that the NHL has. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.